This is the Clean Energy Show.
Hello and welcome to episode 71 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
And I'm on muscle relaxants. I'm James Whittingham. Canada makes a move on zero-emission vehicles. Temperature records from Pakistan to Seattle. And in Canada too, I might add, Brian's electric bike is already obsolete. What a show we have this week. Brian, summer is here, and so is the heat. It seems like mere days ago we were talking about blizzards on the show and complaining about cold snaps. Well, now my ham is getting fried nastily outside. It's just hot.
Yeah, no, busy trying to keep the house cool. We don't have air conditioning, so it's a bit of a struggle. We don't have the same heat as they do on the West Coast, but it is starting to get bad.
Here's the deal. I've got a swimming pool, a permanent steel wall above ground swimming pool heated by solar panels. Let's see, they're about 20 feet by 10 feet in size. They're basically small tubes with rubber mats. It works well. And I've sent a temperature record of 92 Fahrenheit, and we're just getting started, okay? We're just getting started. The question remains, do I go to see how high I can get it, or do I make it usable in the daytime? Because these hot temperatures are great for the evening and the morning, but I'm not sure what to do about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, when it's this hot, you want to go into the pool to cool off, right?
Yeah, you don't want a hot tub. I remember we were in the interior of BC, and they had a 40-degree Celsius hot snap, and we went to the hot springs pool, and because it was the only day we were there, and it was not refreshing. In fact, they made us get out of the water frequently so we wouldn't die.
Well, one of my favorite things to do in the bitter cold is to go to Moose Jaw, my favorite little city that is nearby, and go to the Moose Jaw Spa, which is a hot mineral water spa, natural hot springs. And you go in the winter when it's minus 20, minus 30, and they have a section you can swim outside in the hot pool when it's minus 30, and it's one of my favorite things to do.
I bought a fan for the first time in years. We do have central air, but it's a big, nasty house, and I don't know. I hate using the air conditioning. In fact, okay, so I have this pool, right? The family's not using it. The family's not using the pool, so I'm turned off the air conditioning to heat them out of the house and into the pools where I live. That's where I exist now, because I'm lighter in the pool. I was telling my chiropractor about that. And yes, I did visit the chiropractor today. My back is whacked.
Well, we'll get to that. But, I mean, if you heat them out of the house and then they go in the pool and it's like a hot tub, that's not going to solve anything.
No, you see, I have conundrums all over the place here. I kind of want to see, because sometimes it's hard to heat, if it's like at the end of August and it's dry and it's like 22 degrees as a high, you're not swimming because the pool's not heating up and the days are shorter and the nights are cooler. So I'm just kind of, my instinct is to make the best of it and see how hot I can get that sucker. Plus, it's just a pleasure to swim in the evenings and in the mornings because that's a nice thing. But then I'm not getting the cooling benefit, so I don't know what to do. I guess I could put like a hose in the pool and make it rain or something with cold water.
Oh, yeah. No, that would be a nice compromise. Yeah.
So I did buy a fan, and it is a work of art, this fan. It is from Canadian Tire. And it reminds me of everything we talk about. Why? Because it's electric. And there's no spark plugs. There's no oil to change. There's just, you just plug it in and it runs on electricity.
Well, I got to tell you, my partner went to Canadian Tire a couple of weeks ago and bought a fancy Dyson fan.
Oh, how much?
It was $150, I think.
Oh, that's not bad for a Dyson product.
But it's that kind, it's like a big circle and you can't see any of the blades or anything. It's, it's a weird, like it sucks air in through the bottom of it and then shoots it out through this slit in the round circle. And that's supposed to make it better somehow. I don't know. It makes it more expensive, though. That's for sure.
Does it work at all? I mean, are you disappointed?
Oh, no, it works great. I mean, I'm not sure it's any better than a regular fan, but it's got a nice little remote control, and you can turn it up and down, and it, swivels and stuff, and, you can change all that from the remote, which is nice.
Is it quiet?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, real quiet. So maybe that's the key feature.
Okay. Well, my son, also, the lucky devil, has a new to him car. And we bought it off a friend who had one for sale. We weren't going to buy the little SOB car. because he has a job now, and he should, no one bought me a car.
Yeah.
So, but we bought him one because it was such a good deal. It was a 2002 Honda Civic, which is about as good as you can get because it was only $1,500, and it only has 178,000 kilometers on it.
That's really good.
And I would have been happy with 100,000 more than that. I would have been, hey, that's not bad. And that's what typical, if you look them up. So I could have got it for twice as much money. I could have sold it that night for twice as much money. That's the type of thing it is. And the person kept it in immaculate condition and treated it really well. I know the person as a film producer, and I just really like it. However, I'm back to the old system of dealing with combustion engines again. I'm back to changing the oil. I'm back to looking at the fan belt and all these things on it. I put on expensive windshield washer blades on it, which all cars have, and electric too. But one thing I noticed that I spent more money on his blades than I would on mine because it's my kid. And he's going to university in a different city. And I just see him, in a blizzard coming home. And I bought the blizzard-proof windshield wipers.
Yeah, well, my dream back in the day was always to have a parts car. Do you remember that? Like there were always car guys who had a parts car. Like you just buy an extra car at the junkyard and you get all your parts from that. And in fact, there's some people that live around the corner from us. They drive these kind of older Volvo station wagons. They've got 2 of them, and then they've got a parts car of it as well. So they've got 3 of these Volvo wagons to keep them running.
I think my brother Bill does that. Yeah, he's got the same car and has drive 3 of them, and except he doesn't know how to fix them. So that's kind of like, why bother?
Yeah.
So I just I'm dealing with combustion vehicles again and old ones, and that's where you really notice. And boy, if that was an old electric vehicle, there'd be nothing to worry about beyond the windshield wipers. But as it stands, I'm like listening to the clink when it goes into gear and to the reverse and thinking, is that something? And, all these worries and, is the antifreeze level good? Is it going to overflow if it freezes or gets too hot? And I love electric cars, Brian. That's what I'm saying. I love electric cars.
Yeah, no, my parents several years ago, they were driving home from the lake in their Ford. I think it was a Taurus. And, halfway home, the timing chain broke. And they didn't notice the temperature gauge getting higher and higher, and it fried the entire engine. The whole engine seized up and had to be replaced.
Yeah, I tried to tell them to keep an eye on that, but you know how kids are these days. Things just happen for them, and they keep walking as people throw down rose petals. What makes me mad is that I would have really liked this car about 10 years ago before we got our first new car. I would have envied it. And now my little bastard son, he's not a bastard son, but he could be, has this car. And it's a Honda, and it's got mileage, and it works, and it's going to work for a long time, assumably. So, I don't know. Pisses me off.
No, if you're going to get an old used car, a Honda Civic is about as good as you can get, I think.
And that's what everyone tries to get. All the high school kids, that's what he talked about for years. Dad, I need a Honda Civic. Everyone's got one. Well, I'm not going to buy you one. Well, Ethan's dad bought him one. Well, Ethan's dad is a firefighter and his wife is a teacher. Yeah, that's different. It's different than my situation. The podcasting is not raking in a lot of money. I listened to Lipson podcast, and it's incredible how the podcasting world is changing. I think we should talk about this because we are a podcast. Yeah. And, with the subscriptions coming there, the people are, Spotify is buying exclusive rights to people. Apple Music is buying exclusive rights to people. Joe Rogan was a big one. So he's no longer a podcast. If you can't get it everywhere, it's technically, if there's no RSS feed, it's not a podcast. It's a paid audio, streaming audio. Yeah. But they were saying like, Call Me Daddy, the woman who does that, it used to be 2 women, is now 1 woman. She's got a $60 million contract. Oh. They pointed out that that's more than the highest rating musical artist, Drake, gets on Spotify, from Spotify. That's only $55 million. And that's way above number 2, by the way.
It's a huge problem. Yeah, the way they pay like 0.001 cent per stream of music on those services. I don't know how they get away with that and not go to jail.
Number 4 is Justin Bieber. Let's hear it for Canada. Canada's producing a lot of money for Spotify, I think. Speaking of Canada, Brian, the 2035 is the new year that the federal government is pushing for a ban on oil. And that brings us to our latest segment, Oil Ban.
Oil Ban.
Okay, but you didn't explain what's going on with your back.
Oh, my back, it hurts. That's all. That's all
it?
you need to know. It's just out of whack. And it's been neglected during the pandemic. That's the only news story here, is that it's been neglected. Now it's really bad. But now that my 2-dose vaccination has kicked in after 2 weeks, I'm back at the... Yeah, I had a really tough time. My son graduated from high school yesterday. We were in suits in an auditorium, and I was dying. And it took everything I could do to walk up to the front to take his picture. A giant overweight man hobbling one step at a time. I felt really embarrassed, but I was there, and I got the pictures, and the pictures are good.
I have troubles with my back, and one time I was at a coffee shop downtown, and I was feeling okay, and I was just having a coffee, and then I sneezed and threw my back out from sneezing.
Yes.
And it was so embarrassing because this has happened a few times where I can barely walk. Yeah. And so I had to I had my laptop bag with me and I could barely stand up, and I called a cab to take me home, and the cab was out front. So I had to hobble towards and trying not to make anybody notice because I was so embarrassed, but the coffee shop people noticed and came over and kind of helped me walk out, which was very nice of them. But that was bad.
I had a friend who was in her mid-20s who threw her back out so bad that she had to call an ambulance. And here's the catch. She was naked. But there was no choice. She was
Are you sure this wasn't an I Love Lucy episode?
No. No, it wasn't. And most of our listeners won't even get that. That's the point where we're at. We're getting old, and the people don't even get our references anymore.
Oh, wait, no. It's a Dick Van Dyke Show episode where she was in the bath. Anyway.
Okay. Well, no, it happened, and I think I would just let myself sit there and die. Of course, the pain is hard. It's not like there was no pain, so I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what the hospital does to you. They're not chiropractors. They can inject you with morphine, I guess, and
I think maybe adrenaline or steroids or something they can do, maybe.
Okay. Well, you have the experience of that. Anyway, my back was bad, and it was just a lousy day yesterday. It wouldn't get any worse. And I can't go for walks. I can't go for a walk so that I could lose weight, and that makes it even worse. So it all snowballs. So if you can't go for a walk and you can't, everything's falling apart on me. Everything.
I just have to rest for 2 or 3 days when it happens to me.
People will have to prop me up in a chair and for the podcast, or bring the mic to the bedside, and I'll just do it from there, I guess. I don't know. So yes, Canada, our country. We live in Canada. Brian and I are broadcasting from Canada. Brian from his cool, temperatured bomb shelter in the basement of his house, built in the 50s to avoid nuclear disaster.
62.
62? Pardon me? I keep thinking it's the 50s. Do you mind if we just go with the 50s?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. I'm in the second story of my house, and it's warm, a little bit warm, a little bit humid, and electronics going. So, yeah. Anyway, 2035, 2 years ago, Brian, the federal government in Canada proposed 2040, and our province, our prairie agricultural province, lost its crap. They came up with, I wrote a thing for CBC on this, an op-ed, because they said that there was cultural reasons why we couldn't switch to. I thought that was quoted in the Toronto Star. There was cultural reasons, geographic, and
we love the smell of gasoline in the morning.
It just makes me so mad. And to think that cultural reasons were one of the reasons why we couldn't possibly switch to EVs. Anyway, Canada is moving forward, and the reason they're doing this, they're saying, is because the UN report is saying that if the whole world doesn't stop selling new ICE vehicles in 2035, there's no chance of, saving the planet, which is important.
Yeah, because we have an overall goal in Canada and in many places to be completely net zero by 2050. And this comes from, amongst other things, the International Energy Agency report that said, we got to be carbon free by 2050 all over the world. And if you were still selling gasoline cars in 2040, that wouldn't cut it, because those would probably still be on the road past 2050. But if we cut it out in 2035, give 15 years for the fleet to deteriorate and fall apart, then maybe we can be, net totally zero by 2050.
Well, I think that at the rate we're going, like Norway is banning them in 2025, and the UK is 2030. I was unclear about that last week, so I want to correct that. The UK is 2030. It was 2040, it was 2035, and now it's 2030 as of about a year ago, I think. So, yeah, if everybody bans it, if everybody bans the sale of new vehicles, California, Quebec, different regions, certainly Europe, what's the point? Are people going to make combustion vehicles? They're certainly not going to put effort into designing new ones. They're just going to sell the old crap that they already exist, and that's not going to be sexy after a while. I can't see it a problem. Do you see it as a problem? I think the trajectory is that it'll be there anyway.
No, the trajectory is great, and there was an article in the paper today about it's been a booming year for oil and gas stocks. I don't know if you caught that, but
no,
the post-COVID rebound is a real thing for oil and gas companies.
Yeah, I heard
stocks, particularly in Canada, have been surging, and it's been a real good ride so far in 2021. And of course, 2035 is still a long way away, so who knows how long the party will last. But, things are looking good right now for oil and gas companies.
Yeah, I heard a piece on the radio yesterday where they were talking about $100 a barrel again. However, they had on a expert on the energy industry who said, hey, it's not going to last. Yeah. There are efficiencies involved with, using less people in the oil and gas industry anyway, but he doesn't see the demand lasting. It's going to be, and he also we call it the boom and bust economy of oil where we live. When oil booms, the economy booms. When it busts, the economy busts. He said this is the last boom we're going to see ever.
Wow.
And he's an oil and gas insider. And, yeah. Well, I just, I think that I have mixed feelings about high-priced oil. On the one hand, it boosts cleaner vehicle sales because, if you're going to buy a pickup and spend hundreds of dollars a month running it, then suddenly it's way cheaper. And you have the economic incentive, and that's going to disrupt the gasoline vehicles even more. On the other hand, I feel bad for the workers who are going to get hired and think everything's going to be great. And
all the production is so variable. Like there are so many countries and places that can decide to increase or decrease their supply. And if they do increase, then the price goes down. And if they decrease their production, then the price goes up. So it's one of those things that isn't completely, I don't know random or, it can be controlled to a certain extent. It just depends on the people who want to control it, what they want to do.
Oh, we've got another oil ban this week.
Oil ban.
Brussels is in on the act, Brian.
Yeah, so they're looking to ban diesel cars from 2030 and gasoline cars from 2035. This is apparently not fully locked down yet. This hasn't completely passed, but that's what they are looking to do in terms of the city itself, allowing cars into the city. And yeah, diesel's worst, so they go first at 2030.
Now, if you're a farmer, that's fine. If you're somebody who travels into the city or wants to travel into the city and you're buying a car, can't do it, right?
Yeah, that'll be gone before you know it.
And Britain has changed their target for coal power. Do you want to explain that?
Yeah, so they were planning to phase out all coal electricity generation in 2025, but they've now moved that deadline forward by an entire year to October 2024, which is just around the corner. Really, it's crazy to me, that coal is still burnt for electricity anywhere. They burn tons of it where we live for electricity. I think we talked about this a few years ago. England was very much known for coal pollution. This was, at the start of the Industrial Revolution, the skies of London were black with coal. And here it is in 2021. They're still burning it, but thankfully going to get rid of it by 2024.
That was nicely illustrated on the second last season of The Crown.
Yeah. I think we talked about that on the podcast. That was an excellent episode if anybody's looking to learn more about that.
Yeah, it was. You hear about these things, But to actually see it sort of illustrated the way it was is quite remarkable to see that. Yeah. So Brian, we've got a heat wave. I know the press is covering the heat wave in the States, but we've got a hell of a heat wave in BC and Alberta and Canada, just to the west of us. And the small town of Lytton, BC, which is in the BC interior in a river valley, hit records that broke the Canada hottest temperature record 3 days in a row. It kept breaking its own record. And the record was actually just south of us for Canada, and stood for 77 years or something like that, right? It was in Yellowgrass.
Yellowgrass, Saskatchewan, and I actually drove past Yellowgrass, Saskatchewan just a couple of weeks ago when we went to Weyburn to get the vaccine for my partner. So, yeah, this is a record for the hottest temperature ever recorded in Canada. It stood since 1937. The town is very, very proud of their record. They erected this metal sign to commemorate it. And, they could do that because, they knew the record would last for a long time, and it did. But my, observation I shared on Twitter was that I doubt that Lytton, BC, as the new record holder, is going to bother to create some kind of a commemorative sign, because it'll likely just be broken. And in fact, it's already been broken 3 times now.
I grew up with this. I've always been fascinated with weather, like a little kid weather nerd that I was, and always followed the heat waves and the peaks, and I thought, wow, 45, that's something out of a book or something. That's a movie. That's incredibly hot. What is that, like 113 or something?
115, 16 Fahrenheit.
Yeah, and it was mythical, and I thought, well, that'll never happen again. And isn't it cool that it was, when I was in university, it hit 41. And 2 years ago, I was in Death Valley, and they were having a heat wave, and it also hit 41 again when I was gone here, which was remarkable. But I was in Death Valley, and it was 50 degrees that day, which was hotter than normal. Death Valley National Park in Eastern California, and it was such a remarkable place because it's always that hot in the summer. It's not, it's not a heat wave. It's frequently over 45. But that was hot for Death Valley even, and I know I'm old and I'm not in shape, but I could not stand more than 10 minutes out of my car. Like it physically, I've talked about this every time. It was one of the most interesting weather experiences I've had. Is it just burned? It burned like a giant hairdryer that God was pointing at you and just burning your flesh. It was unbearable. And I'm used to hot, dry weather here on the prairies. But it was like wind chill in reverse. You know how wind chill is painful? This was painful in the hot side. It was, and I could just imagine dying. Like if I didn't have a new Prius, I would have felt like, boy, one thing goes wrong with this car, I'm a dead man. I'm a cockroach on the side of the road, and I'm not going to live. But Lytton, BC, Brian, blew the record by 5 degrees Celsius almost. It wasn't, most records are beat by half a degree or a degree at most. This was blown out of the water.
No, and I have the numbers here. So the first day it broke the record, it was 115.9, which is 46.6. And then the next day it went to 118. And then the day after that went to 121 Fahrenheit, which is 49.6. Round that up to 50 Celsius.
Yeah, I was 122 at Death Valley on their thermometer, and my car said 50. And then at night, it was completely dead. But at night, we were up on a mountaintop, sort of on a lookout, and we stopped on the side of the road, and all the life came back. Like you could hear things in the sand and the bush and the shrub, and it all came back to life. They whatever it is doesn't scorpions and such. They don't exist during the day. So that's incredible. And here's the thing: Death Valley has air conditioning. Yeah.
Because they know it's going to be hot.
Because it's hot all the time.
Yeah.
Hundreds of people are dying as we speak because of that heat wave in Canada and the northwest United States. Even Seattle, they don't have a high penetration. One of my friends posted a thing of 37 degrees on his main floor the other day in Vancouver. Yeah. Vancouver getting 40 is like us getting 50. Like it's just unheard of. Like 30 is like rare there.
No, and sadly, there's lots of heat stroke problems in BC right now. And I have a whole list here of all the records that have been broken lately. But I wanted to also talk about Pakistan because it hit 52 Celsius there in Pakistan. And there's a nice article here on the Telegraph explaining like that's basically gets to be around the temperature where you die because it's also very humid in this area in Pakistan. And there reaches a certain point, if it's hot enough and the humidity is high enough, that sweating no longer helps to cool you off. It actually makes it worse.
Really?
So at a certain point,
oh my God,
sweating doesn't help, and you just get hotter and hotter until you die.
It's not evaporating. So the air is too full of water, too saturated with water vapor. And if it's not evaporating, the evaporation process is what makes you cool because it takes the energy, the heat, it uses the heat to evaporate and takes that away from your body. So that's, the humidity was like 10% in Lytton when it hit that temperature, mercifully.
Yeah, that's not bad.
I don't know what it is in Vancouver, do you? Because it's on the coast. It's got to have some humidity.
I'm not sure, yeah, and I think it's cooler right by the ocean, and as you get into the suburbs, it gets hotter. But yeah, I have some of these other temperatures here. So Seattle had a nice run there at 104, and then the next day was 108, and that was breaking some records. Spokane went up to 109. This is breaking their record. Bellingham, Washington was 99. It was just the biggest list ever, I think, of record-breaking temperatures that perhaps there has ever been.
And this is a heat dome that they predicted for some time in advance, to the meteorologists' credit, because they did say this was coming. And in fact, my son was the first to point it out to me. He said, "Dad, there's Lytton, BC, if the forecast holds 5 days from now, will be 46, and that will be a Canadian record." And I posted that on Twitter. No one paid attention. No one ever pays attention to me on Twitter.
Now, here's a question for you, James, because you're a weather expert. Whenever we have a day where it's like minus 40, which we talk about a lot, some idiot always says, "Hey, where's your global warming now? It's minus 40 out." And we always say, well, that's one isolated day. That doesn't mean anything. Now, this is more than one isolated day. It's 2 or 3 days. But what do you say to that person who is a climate change skeptic when they come across, hot temperatures do happen, and this is this is just a once-in-a-lifetime thing. And
it was bound to break regardless. Yes. Now, I did accredit this to climate change on my Twitter account, which I do regret, because one heat wave doesn't make climate change. Here's the deal, though, Brian. And my smarty pants son, who's just out of high school now, he's fascinated by weather too, because the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and he has been climate change affects him more because he's not going to die tomorrow like I am. My air conditioner breaks or my pool drains. It would be a dead man.
Or gets too hot.
Or gets too hot and boils me like a frog, which is entirely possible. Look for it next week. He says that the deal with this is it's going to happen more often. It's not that, it's they're talking one. I've seen climate scientists say 1 in 10,000 years, this event, that there are places that haven't, in this heat wave, that haven't been this hot in 10,000 years. Now, our records only go back at most 160 years in the east of North America, because we haven't been around that long, Europeans anyway, and to make records. And where we are, it only goes back to like 1885 or in that area, because we haven't been around here long enough. So, yeah. And also, Bill Cosby's been released from prison. Do you have any comments on that? Yes. It was on the front page of the CBC. So I know it's real. They released him from prison. A Supreme Court justice overturned it.
Breaking news. Wow. No, I have no comment.
I was going to put that in our show intro, but I thought better not.
I saw him live twice.
Really?
Here in Regina in would have been maybe the 1980s live show.
Well, he had a show on the air, or before he had a show on the air?
Before his sitcom, I think. Yeah, he would travel here and do stand-up.
Where did you see him? At the
Center of the Arts, our big theater, 2,500 seat theater.
Yeah, I saw Jay Leno there.
Yeah, me too.
Not a fan of either of them anymore. Just to point
No,
out.
no.
Not
Jay
that
Leno
Leno's
was
a
kinda
sex
funny at the
abuser,
time.
but, he might as well be. Sorry, Jay. He's probably listening. I'm sorry, Jay. I didn't.
Sorry, yeah. He's a big fan.
A big fan, of course. Brian, I have some feedback, if you don't mind. We're getting into personal matters here.
Yep.
Last week, we were talking about chocolate donuts and how my son, who works at a grocery store now, brought home what I believe to be the best chocolate donut I've ever eaten.
Yep.
And you had some stupid things to say about that. Obviously uninformed about chocolate donuts.
Sure.
And but we have a message here. An email says, "Hi guys, the best chocolate dipped donuts are at Mariposa Bakery in Aurelia." Where's Aurelia, Brian? Sounds Ontario-ish.
Somewhere in Ontario.
Somewhere in Ontario. Just like the donuts they used to have at the Golden Mile Bakery. Do you remember the Golden Mile Bakery where we live?
I do. Those. No, that was in Regina.
Yeah. He says they're just like that. But I'm not familiar with the Golden Mile Bakery, even though my dad worked down there.
Yeah, well, it was back when it used to be like a Loblaws or an OK Economy store, but then the bakery was next to it. Yeah, they were pretty darn good.
Yeah, they were good, and that was my favorite sort of donut was the Loblaws donut, if you will, But and then they stopped making them, which was a problem. Not a problem. It's probably a good thing for me to be alive. But then my son brought home this, and it was better than anything I've ever had. And I know what I'm talking about. He says he's got. This is Paul. He's got more comments. He says, "Brian, you don't want to build a rammed earth cottage. You want to build a straw bale cottage. Much better insulation. Cheers, Paul."
Well, I can look into that.
You don't hear much about straw bale anymore. I was really looking into it 15 years ago.
It seems like that's for hippies.
It is for hippies, but rammed earth isn't?
No. Rammed earth is for cool professionals.
Architectural geeks who want to do something interesting and have the earth to look at on their walls.
Yeah, I suspect rammed earth is better, but I could look into it.
Okay. Well, we'll get back. More to come, Paul. Thank you for your email, as always. And we always love to hear from our listeners, and this is where I'm going to tell you how to get a hold of us. We're on Twitter. Clean Energy Pod, one word. That is Clean Energy Pod on Twitter. Email us. Direct message us. Do whatever you like. Email is cleanenergyshow@gmail.com, and our voicemail service is speakpipe.com/cleanenergyshow. And we are sitting dormant on TikTok as Clean Energy Pod there as well. And look for that in the fall as we start to promote the show and put some clips up. What else do you have for us this week, Mr. Stockton?
Yeah, so I wanted to mention an excellent opinion piece that I read on the CBC website. So this is written by Sarah Hastings Simon, who is somebody I follow on Twitter. And she is a senior researcher at the Payne Institute for Public Policy at the Colorado School of Mines. What do you suppose that is, the Colorado School of Mines?
I don't know. It's where you learn to be a miner? I don't know.
Also a research fellow at the School of Public Policy at the University of Calgary. And it sounds like she hosts a podcast. But anyway, an excellent opinion piece that she published on the CBC website. If you're interested in looking for it, it's titled "Beware of Climate Delay, Masquerading as Climate Action." And this basically relates to that discussion we have occasionally about small modular nuclear reactors, which neither of us is opposed to, but it's still a developing technology. It's still many years away from actually working and being implemented. But what if you have a government that is interested in not doing anything about climate change and about having the status quo in terms of oil and gas? Mm-hmm. What they can do to delay it is start talking about things like small modular nuclear reactors, and they can look like they're doing something because they're talking about that. But in the meantime, 10 years go by with the status quo of oil and gas and coal, and nothing ever changes. So, I thought it sort of encapsulated a lot of what we kind of talked about it, but because she's smarter than me, came up with an excellent way to kind of frame it.
Yeah, well, that sets off an alarm bell, doesn't it, for our local government in Saskatchewan? And we had a listener from Australia talking about the similar circumstances last week. If you don't believe in climate, you pretend you do if you're a politician, and you delay. Yeah. Or maybe you've got money in the bank, too. I mean, there's all kinds of things going on. There's been some big stories here, and even today, Exxon Mobil. Is it Exxon? Yeah, Exxon Mobil, Channel 4 News, I believe that's in Britain. Exclusive, a senior Exxon Mobil lobbyist has been captured on camera claiming that the oil giant is waging a secret war on climate change legislation. The covert recordings filmed by Greenpeace UK lift the lid on the secretive world of U.S. lobbying. I'm just going to read the thread here that they tweeted out. Lobbyist Keith McCoy claims the company aggressively fought science to deny climate change action in order to maximize profit and shareholder return, and lobbied key senators in the United States to remove measures from President Biden's $2 trillion infrastructure bill, something Exxon Mobil dispute. The ExxonMobil executive likens the lobbying of Congress members of how fishermen target fish, putting out bait, reeling them in on issues like carbon tax, electric vehicles, chemicals taxation, and infrastructure.
Yeah, and I mean, it's great if there's new recordings or something that proves it, but this is basically a confirmation of things that we've already known, and other kind of documents, internal documents have gotten out over the years that the oil companies have known about climate change for decades.
They have, and they are. I think that the fact that they're undermining government action on it, I think that is pretty damning. I mean, we all can suspect that. It all seems like something that seems to be taking place, but when you have proof of it, I think that's a pretty significant development there, and we'll keep an eye on that. But life is going to go on. ExxonMobil will just keep on doing the same damn thing. You know that. I know that. That's how it goes. So let's move on.
What do you think?
Brian, this is our weekly segment. What do you think? Where I turn to you, Mr. Brian Stockton, who is on his last day of sabbatical, I just found out. I didn't realize that for the last 6 months you were on sabbatical. Didn't even realize it. You seem busy. Do you keep busy? You keep busy?
I do. Yeah, I mean, a sabbatical isn't really a vacation. I still have lots of stuff to do, including this podcast.
Including this important podcast. So Tesla vision-powered active safety features are found to be at least as good as with radar in a new test. Did you see that, and do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, so we talked about this a week or two ago. Tesla started removing the radar sensors from their cars just a few weeks ago, and this caused them to lose certain safety certifications because the new system that used cameras only and not radar had to be tested by the IHS, whatever that's called, the Highway Safety and Consumer Reports is doing a retesting. And it turns out everything's fine. The safety features work just as well without radar. And, this will just keep improving as the software keeps improving.
What they do is they have a sort of an inflatable back end of a car. Because I've seen this when I was looking to shopping for my Prius. Because it has those active safety features. And, and they sort of put that into place and see if it stops. Because if it doesn't, They also have these pedestrians that walk.
Yeah, exactly. These mannequins that have moving legs.
That's the weird thing. And you hit those sometimes. But it's all about whether it will react and stop. I would like to see these systems protected from wildlife collisions, because that is having done it myself, and my wife almost hit a deer in the city last week.
My!
She was so close that she thought she hit it and was looking for fur on the car. She didn't hear a noise, but she thought it was really big. It was on Lytton Drive south by the sort of an open area, and she's going 80 kilometers an hour, I'm thinking that zone.
Wow.
And she said if she was speeding, she would have hit it for sure. So she wasn't speeding.
Well, we do know that we talked about this early in the days of the podcast, that there was footage of a Tesla avoiding a deer, and that happened here in Saskatchewan, driving down the highway with autopilot on, and at the last second, the car swerved a little bit to avoid hitting a deer. So that capability seems to exist with the Tesla cars, and again, it should just get better as they keep improving the software.
Saw that too, and I was very impressed with it. And then, a couple months later, you see somebody in our local Tesla group say, "Yeah, I hit a deer." So
Yeah.
it's not foolproof, and with vision, it is at night, and it would have to have it'd be like an intersection, because they are coming from a blind spot in the ditch and hopping up on the road.
Yeah, and as we discussed the first time, I saw a deer once hit the side of a truck, and I don't think there's necessarily anything you can do if the deer is going to hit the side of your car. Like, they just keep running straight ahead.
Well, Brian, it's time for you to tell us about your electric bike. What's going on with your electric bike, your foldable electric bike that you put in the back of your Tesla Model 3, take to the lake or wherever you're fancy, and the one that you never drive unless you have somewhere to go. An errand to run.
Yeah, so I was shopping a long time for a foldable electric bike, and I finally bought one a few months ago. It's the Fido D11. It's a Chinese bike. I was finally able to get a Canadian dealer that would sell them. Anyway, this was on Electrek today. They unveiled an update to the Fido D11. It's now called the Fido X, and it's basically the same bike, but better and about the same price. It's they've just improved it. Like the folding latch is now hidden. The bike was a little bit clunky in a couple of ways, and it seems like they've fixed all those issues. One thing I'm worried about is that the battery's in the seat post, and so I would worry about. So far, I haven't locked it up anywhere, but if I was to lock it up somewhere, I'd worry a little bit about the seat post getting stolen. Because there's no way to lock it up, so you'd have to take it with you, which is what I thought I would do, but it turns out it's really, really heavy.
Oh.
So I'm not sure I want to cart it around. But anyway, on the new update, it's got some kind of a touchpad, a keypad with a combination lock for the battery. So you'll be able to lock up the bike.
Touchpad, combination lock. That's cool.
Yeah, it's a little touchpad, so there's a combination in order to be able to pull out the
it's not just a lock.
Battery. So that's the thing that I wish that I had.
Yeah, that sounds really advanced and fancy. However, that is always going to be the case when you buy an electric car and you buy an electric bike. 2 weeks later, there's something better. So, like a computer.
Yeah, and it's not technically out yet. They're selling it first with an Indiegogo campaign, which I don't really love. So, they're not shipping them yet, but the Indiegogo campaign will go live soon. If you can get in early, it's quite a good price, like $9.99 US. But the last one didn't ship to Canada. I had to wait a long time to find a dealer. So, depends on where you live if you'd even be able to get it. But I don't know. It's worth looking at, I think, if you're looking for an inexpensive folding electric bike.
Brian, you wanted to talk about the Tesla Megapacks going up in California.
So there's a new Megapack battery plant that has now started operation in California. It's 142 Tesla Megapacks. These are sort of shipping container sized batteries. So this is the new biggest battery, I think. It's 100 megawatts with a 400 megawatt hour storage. And they put it up in Ventura County in California, and it was replacing a proposed gas peaker plant. They thought they were going to have to build a gas peaker plant to fill in for, excess power needs on certain days. But the local people from around the area got together and complained about that and didn't want that. And they ended up with this giant battery. So this is a big win for clean energy. So there's a gas peaker plant that was not built because of this. And it's going to help, obviously smooth out the grid. It can run the local area for like 4 hours on total battery power if everything else goes out. It's a massive battery project.
And these things stabilize the grid, and that helps too. This is hilarious. I should have mentioned this with my back because it ties into the show. I was about yesterday was my son's graduation. Big day, right? Well, I was trying to sneak in a chiropractor appointment. My chiropractor had one online appointment available. I could have snuck it in before the graduation ceremonies. I'm there, ready to click. And what happens? The power goes out for half a second. Okay, so it doesn't affect my laptop. My laptop's fine. The lights flicker, but my router has to reboot. And guess what? The damn appointment was gone. And my son's graduation, I was in pain. It was a bad, well, you know, they don't fix you right away when you walk out of the chiropractor, but it would have been very helpful to not have that power blip that a battery probably would have saved to stabilize the grid. And can you imagine being next door to a place that's going to just build a peaker plant in your backyard? They fire up a turbine, a jet engine, blasting out pollution at 4:00 every day. No, thank you. No, thank you. Batteries?
This is clearly the better solution. I don't know the cost relative to what the natural gas plant. It's possible the battery pack cost more, maybe more upfront, but then is cheaper in the long run. I'm not really sure, but we're definitely getting to the place where it's going to be just cheaper all around. I mean, it's a big deal to build a gas-fired power plant.
And this will, the oil prices going up doesn't directly correlate with natural gas, but it does a little bit. And if fossil fuels go up, then projects like this become more, on paper, more doable. And so that just explodes them. So this will be a wind in the sails of green energy, the fossil fuel prices going up. I don't know if fossil fuels industry realizes that. I have a feeling not all of them do, especially people below the very, Eurocentric head office type people. But yeah, it's happening, and it's going to be wind in the sails, and it's going to give a big boost to what's going on, things like that. There was an over-the-air update to Teslas in China that was a big deal.
Yeah, so this was kind of the big Tesla story of the last week, was that, first of all, one day that there was these massive headlines about 300,000 Teslas having to be recalled in China, and essentially a lot of really misleading headlines, which the Tesla fans like to complain about. It wasn't technically a recall, because a recall normally means you got to bring your car in. It was just a software update. They were able to fix it with a software update. So to explain what the issue is, and this happens in my car as well, it is a potential safety issue. So to engage the cruise control on a Tesla, there's the right-hand stalk, and you just click it down one time, and then boom, you're into cruise control. But there was no sound that went with it. Like, there's a little thing that lights up on the screen, but no sound. So that's all that the software fix was. The regulators in China thought, well, it's possible people can engage it by accident, which is true. And so to fix it, they just had to add a sound effect to when you put the little turn signal down. Now, the thing that actually bugs me about it is that in a Tesla car, when you engage the cruise control, it sets the speed based on what the speed limit is. So a Tesla always knows what the speed limit is. It has maps, it has cameras. If you're in a 50 zone, it knows you're in a 50 zone. And so you put on the stalk and it automatically sets the cruise control to either 50, or I have mine to set to go 5% above the speed limit. So mine goes to 52. But the problem is the Tesla is not 100% accurate in knowing what the correct speed is.
Oh.
So I've been in, say, like a school zone before where the speed limit's 30, and I go to engage the cruise control because it's very hard to drive that slow. So I like to use the cruise control a lot in the city. Yeah. You want to keep it at 30 or 32. Mm-hmm. But I've done that where it thinks the speed limit is 50, so it suddenly starts to accelerate. But, you just touch the brake and turn it off again, so it's not the biggest deal. But that's the thing I would like to see them fix is, it always sets it based on the speed limit, but, every once in a while it gets the speed limit wrong.
Why do you think that is? Because it's camera-based, and we're talking probably daytime hours if you even have a
It's camera-based, but it's also map-based. It's slightly confusing because they did add it recently where the cameras react But I've been in places where there are no speed signs and it changes. So it seems to also be using their map data as well.
Okay. Well, let's get to the Eevee of the week. Well, Mr. Stockton, the Eevee of the week this week is the Kia Niro Eevee, not to be confused with the Kia Niro, which is a plug-in hybrid trying to replicate the Prius in a way, popular hybrid from Toyota, and not to be confused with the plug-in Kia Niro, which is replicating the plug-in Prius. Hybrid, gas engine, battery, short range only on Eevee. So we're talking about the Eevee here. It is $40,265 US dollars. Car and Driver says the high points are generous standard features, which I like. I don't like to pay for my features. Handsome exterior design, more refined than most rivals, but the low points are unspectacular cabin materials, shorter range than most competitors, boo, and it's not sold everywhere, double boo. So the verdict from Car and Driver is that the Kia Niro Eevee is anything but exciting, but it's still an attractive, well-equipped Eevee, probably something you might look for used as a city car one day. In the James Whittingham one-day Regina to Calgary trip test that normally takes 8 hours, including stops for lunches, it will take 4 charges and 1 hour and 28 minutes. Basically, I want it done in an hour with 2 30-minute charges, and it's adding 2 14-minute stops to that. Not the end of the world. Not the end of the world, but yeah, it's not one of the brighter Eevees out there. It's got a 64 kilowatt-hour battery on the big one. It's got a smaller one as well, which probably you shouldn't bother with unless it's truly a city car. It does best the Leaf's capacity, which is good. And it sort of matches the Kona Eevee and falls just short of the Bolt Eevee, which is slow charging at the fast charger station, but pretty big batteries and pretty efficient. And we're looking at 239 miles of range, and it charges at 100 kilowatts, which is not bad. It's better than the aforementioned GM Bolt Eevee from Chevy, but not 150 like the Tesla Model 3 and 250 and hopefully beyond soon. So yeah, it's a bit behind on that. And I'm learning that charging speed's important, like for practicality beyond city use.
Yeah, no, I really like the Kia Niro Eevee. That and the Kona Eevee from Hyundai are I think, here in Canada, those are maybe 2 of the best Eevees that you can get that are non-Tesla. But in order to get the bigger battery, your price is really getting kind of up there. It's getting close to like Tesla Model 3 kind of territory. So, that's how I couldn't really justify buying one. And the charging infrastructure around here is not particularly good. So, again, it's a few bucks more for the Tesla, but probably worth it in most cases because of the charging network. But it is a form factor that a lot of people prefer. It's kind of like a small SUV or a small crossover. So I like the form factor, maybe not the styling so much, but the Niro Eevee and the Kona Eevee, they're kind of the same platform. I think they're both, decent cars.
Car and Driver calls it not so much an SUV, not so much a crossover, but a tall wagon, because it really is not meeting the form factor. That's kind of what the Bolt is like.
But still a bit on the small side. It's a little bigger than the Kona, than the Hyundai Kona. It's a little bigger than that, but not much.
The Clean Energy Show Lightning Round. Oh, baby, it's time for the Lightning Round when we clean up the week's headlines. Brian, are you excited?
Let's do it.
All right. I don't see any reason why not. The U.S. government has awarded grants for electric and hydrogen buses to 49 projects in 46 states. This is part of their big spend. Do you think that'll make a difference on anything?
Yeah, well, that's remarkable that they were able to spread the money around. This is kind of how budgets work in the U.S. You got to spread the money around to as many states as possible.
Yeah. And they're doing it to all of them pretty much, which is good. Everybody should be taking their bus grants, and that will help them realize that electric buses are good. They want to help bring down the price of electric buses by having more of them built, and they're going to be American built. I assume, from Proterra, California. I'm just looking at your Fido X electric bike on electric. And the X surpasses the 11, but the X Roman numeral is a 10, so to me it feels like a step backwards. But I noticed it has a torque sensor.
Weird.
You don't have a torque sensor. That must be a big upgrade on the bike, right?
Apparently not. And yeah, I do find it weird. The pedal assist is slightly weird, and I guess it's because it doesn't have a torque sensor.
So with the torque sensor, if you're pedaling a little bit, it will power you a little bit. If you're pedaling hard, it will power you hard, and that's kind of how that goes. So
yeah, on mine it seems to be kind of on or off.
Volvo is previewing its all-electric future using its concept Recharge EVs. Do you think Volvo's behind the game here, the Swedish company?
Yeah, I mean, kind of everybody's behind, but, I think they've got a chance if they keep at it.
Tesla is expected to deliver 200,000 vehicles, according to Wall Street.
Yeah, so they had a record quarter in the first quarter, 185,000 cars delivered. So it should probably be another record, like around 200,000. No one's totally sure. The thing everyone, I think, is kind of wondering about if they can hit 1 million vehicles for the year, which would be basically doubling what they did last year. And that's looking not so likely. That would be pretty hard to pull off. But they will be close to 1 million, which in itself is pretty remarkable.
Well, Hydro-Quebec and others are teaming up to provide 4,500 EV stations in the province of Quebec, Canada. Where do power companies fit in to charging stations, do you think? They sell more electricity if they, set it up, but is that really beneficial?
It's just going to depend. And of course, yeah, every jurisdiction is different. Every utility is different. So it's hard to make a kind of a generalization about it. If they're kind of innovatively minded, hopefully they're thinking about it as a business opportunity. I think most places are probably thinking of it as a place where they can possibly get some government subsidies to help them out. They're probably not thinking of it as a business opportunity, and it may not be a huge money-making thing. But it just depends. Every place is different because everybody's utility is different.
I don't know why we're talking about it. I was talking to my wife about a battery gigafactory being built every day. She was eating breakfast poolside, and I was floating already in the morning to my already hot water. Not salted, but hot. And sure enough, Nissan is building the UK's first EV battery gigafactory. Right now, I think they were into their own batteries at first when they started the Leaf EV 10 years ago. Then they went to LG, I believe, and I can't remember. Maybe it was one of the other companies, but they contracted it rather to another battery company. But now Nissan is building their own gigafactory. When Toyota builds a gigafactory or Honda builds a gigafactory for batteries on their own, well, no, it's over for gas, or possibly Toyota, one of the two. So
yeah, and the UK has obviously a huge, long history of building cars, so it makes total sense to put an EV battery factory there. So that's great.
So Tesla has released a new update for its vehicles with new Tesla Vision system to restore all autopilot features. Is that for cars that don't have the radar?
Yeah, exactly. That's just for the cars released in the last month or so without the radar.
But basically, that means it's working out, right? That the Vision is working, and because a lot of people don't have the Vision. So the MGM Resorts in Las Vegas Strip is introducing a 100-megawatt solar array to power 13 hotels. That's a lot.
100 megawatts. That's massive.
You would think that would power half a city, a small city, but that's 13 of their hotels on the Las Vegas Strip. So from now on, when you see all those tacky, gaudy lights in the Las Vegas Strip, you'll know they're solar powered.
No, I imagine casinos and hotels probably use a disproportionately large amount of electricity.
Yes,
so that's great.
And it makes sense in Nevada. Plus, they I think it was the Bellagio had a lot of solar. I noticed that when we were there, and they were building more adjacent to the hotel.
No, and I know they, crank up the air conditioning and also like leave the doors open. That's how much energy they use down there in Las Vegas. So when you're walking past the casino, this waft of cold air comes out of the casino and it invites you
Have
in.
you noticed the smell wafting with the cold air? Because
No.
I noticed this when I was there. There was odors, and they weren't natural, and I knew they were up to something. And I looked it up, and sure enough, there are companies that specialize in odors to make you gamble or do whatever, or shop or spend money.
Yeah.
It just the odor was to make you feel like you were in a rich environment. That it didn't smell like money. I didn't like the smell that much, actually.
Like new car smell, maybe?
Well, new money smell. I don't know, or something. And they spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for these chemicals that get emitted into the airstream. And I was right. And there isn't a lot of information about it, but I did see a Las Vegas sort of gambling industry magazine story on it. Talking about it. So you can trust no one when you smell something.
And I don't know if we talked about this on the show, but of course the boring tunnels in Las Vegas have now opened, and it takes you from one end of the convention center to the other. It's the largest convention center in America. And this is, Elon Musk's boring company, and there's Tesla cars that drive you through. So that's an interesting project that it sounds like they're going to try and expand it to the rest of the strip.
You know what, Brian? We should have our scent for our own show, our own scent for the podcast, and people can just sort of push a button and have it evaporate as they listen.
The only scratch and sniff podcast.
Yeah, I'm thinking ass. What do you think? What would be appropriate for us? And finally this week, the BMW i3 is no longer to be sold. The car that Larry David drives on his HBO improvised sitcom, Curb Your Enthusiasm. Kind of a neat car, one I considered myself, actually. One of the problems with this is that a large part of it is made out of carbon fiber for lightweight, so you little nick and you've got a $13,000 bumper to replace. But I'm kind of sad to see that go. Do you have any emotional connection to the i3?
Well, I could never afford a new one. They're crazy expensive.
You would never buy a new one.
As a used car, I think that's my only interest would be in a used car. So it doesn't matter to me if they stop making them.
Well, Brian, that's it for this week, and summer is beginning. We will strive to podcast as best we can most every week during the summer, and we'll see you along the way. We always appreciate you joining us. Please contact us. Hearing from you is one of the best things we enjoy on this show. Please join us next week for another edition where we have a conversation about the week's developments of news and clean energy and transportation.
Yeah, see you next week.